I literally just select, and then I think it's like a Command Shift T or P, or right click Save to Pieces, and it's there. I don't even have to think about it until I need to look it up again at a later date. It was one of those tools that really surprised me. It was a very simple premise, storing snippets, but the way that it's been implemented is, to me, above and beyond anything I could have expected. It just gave me a good feeling. It feels like, when you have those mom and pop stores where everyone knows everyone, and they know what you like, and that's the feeling. Like, if I use this prompt, which is going to go and be stored in a database somewhere as they keep on developing this, you may inadvertently contribute to something later on down the line that doesn't align with your values. So I at least try to keep that in mind. My choices, ones I'll be able to live with.
So you've seen Pieces 2 years ago, you've seen Pieces now. So what's Pieces going to be up to in 2 years? What do you think? What's your guess? Frankie, as you know, I'm Rosie. I work with the Pieces team, and we're really grateful that you're talking with us today.
I'm very happy to be talking to you today as well.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do and where you started and all of that?
Yeah, so I've been in development about 3 years, going on 4. It was a bit of a weird, I used to work in hospitality, and then it was like, I was a stay-at-home dad. You saw my daughter before the call. So with my son, I for 5 years was a stay-at-home father. When he went to school, I was like, okay, I always wanted to get into like software development, and it was like, it's now or never. So I then kind of put myself on this path to self-learn, and then when I moved to the Netherlands, I was lucky enough to do some study here, and I got my first job in 2020 when the world kind of stopped. But yeah, and now I work as a front-end developer in a SaaS company. And yeah, I really enjoy what I do. I think it's, development for me is, I think, the closest thing I feel to magic. It's you kind of write these lines of code, and they do all these kind of really incredible things. And I really like that. I love problem solving. And front end, there's also the visual kind of connect, knowing that the user will actually interact and see things that interact with the code that I write. And that's very gratifying.
Do you ever get to do any of the design side, or are you purely just the development?
Purely development. We have designers on our team. I first, the funny thing is, I thought I wanted to be a web designer when I kind of many years ago was going down this path. I thought I wanted to be a web designer, but then I realized I enjoyed the kind of the development side more. But I do try to keep as well informed as I can with like design trends and things like that. I feel that's important as a front end developer, because we are a bit like the programmatic implementers of the designs. So it is, I think, in my opinion, important to kind of yeah, just keep abreast with things about accessibility and UI, UX, just so that, yeah, we can make good experiences for the people that have to use the sites and the products that we build.
Absolutely. So what languages do you code in? What IDEs do you usually use?
So I started out with the big three: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then
Hmm.
for a little while I kind of went down this sort of full stack path. So I am familiar with a bit of Node, which is backend JavaScript.
Sure.
Um, but then I realized, no, I really do like the front end. So for a little while I dabbled in React. It was not my favorite, and I think that's more because I'm so early in my career. I feel frameworks have their uses, and then they have their places. At the same time, I came to realize that a lot of people just throw frameworks at everything. It's like
Sure.
there's a lot of great stuff in the native HTML and the native JavaScript APIs and things, but we break a lot of those things with like frameworks like React, and then you throw JavaScript on top of JavaScript to fix the things you've kind of broken in the native kind of native APIs. So about a year ago, I kind of stumbled across this idea of like the lean web development approach, which is kind of going back to more vanilla JS and going back to using HTML like out
Yeah.
of the box, because it's a really powerful like markup language, and Even CSS, a lot of people joke that like, yeah, CSS is not really a programming language, or like front-end developers, or we just, color things. But it's growing increasingly complex from like 20 years ago. 20 years ago, if you knew HTML, CSS, and a bit of JavaScript, you'll find as a front-end developer. Now it's so different. You have to know about APIs. Yeah, some people learn about frameworks. You have all the different approaches to like object-oriented CSS and functional programming, and it's just way more. Uh, there's a bigger like depth of knowledge I feel needed when you're just starting. Like
Sure.
the kind of the learning curve now is quite huge. And then just keeping on top of everything and staying up to date is really a full-time job in itself.
That's interesting. So you feel a little bit like as a front end developer, you're almost pushing into full stack just to be a good front end developer.
Right. Yeah. Even in
Yeah.
my day job, like I often have to like ask the backend developers things and have to sit with them to understand what it is they've implemented so that I can
Mm,
try and do something on the front. Um, and it's interesting, but it's like um, I sometimes wish I could have gotten into it like 20 years ago when it was just moving pixels on the screen. That's another simplification, but yeah, it is just like the web has changed a lot in like the 20, 30 years. It's like since those really early, I don't know, MySpace and GeoCities pages that a lot of people who are the, like thought leaders in development now, they got their start in that time. Like we have web apps, we have like, progressive web apps, we have all these things, Electron, which is JavaScript for like desktop apps. It's amazing how much has changed and how much JavaScript, which is something I'm very passionate about, has like developed over time. Sure.
yeah. So you feel a little bit like maybe you have to learn more than one language to be successful, maybe more than one framework, more than one set.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely can't sit on your laurels and be like, oh yeah, this is what I know and this is all I'm going to know. And in my mindset, I kind of was lucky to work where I am now because they don't have an attachment to a framework, and they really focused on just working with like vanilla JS. I was like, this is amazing because I want to be a very good JavaScript developer. All the frameworks like Angular, React, they're built on top of that. I mean, and frameworks will come and go. Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Angular was everything's on the Angular. But it's like I feel a lot of people miss the opportunity to really get a deep knowledge of what JavaScript is capable
Yeah.
of what HTML is capable of. And I think, like any like craftsperson, I want to be very good with those tools because they form the basis of everything that we do. Um,
Mhm.
and then it makes it a lot easier to work with other things and incorporate other things um, in a way that does the least amount of damage, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think it's helpful to have this type of building block understanding of development as co-pilots and AI and tools are all getting more and more advanced. What sets us apart from the tools is our logic, our building blocks, our knowledge. So I agree with you that it's really important to have a focus on that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're all over the place with languages and doing all sorts of fun things. What about your tools? What tools do you use? Do you in VS Code?
Um, I started with VS Code like most people because it's a great like text editor and it's free, which is
It's free.
yeah. I mean, when you're just starting out as a developer, like most things, I think when anyone's starting anything of any kind new, free is always good because you don't know if it's going to stick. Some people go the other way that they throw a whole bunch of money at something and maybe like quit it after a little while.
Yeah.
But no, VS Code was a solid editor. But then in my first like developer job, the team worked with WebStorm.
Mm,
And so, but yeah, I mean, that's a paid IBE, and it's definitely worth it. I think if you're like a JavaScript developer, and JetBrains in general make really good tools.
mhm,
We have almost editors for each language specifically. There's PHP Storm, there's IntelliJ for Java. WebStorm is amazing. It is a bit resource heavy, so it's the kind of thing that, yeah, if you aren't working with, let's say, a mid to high end machine, it can be a drag because it is
mhm.
so powerful and so resource hungry. I recently I heard about Sublime Text. I thought, oh, let me give it a look. It's also paid editor, but it's because of my whole kind of going into the whole lead web thing. Some of the thought leaders in that sphere kind of recommended it as, I think it's like a nice in between VS Code and WebStorm. You have like Sublime Text, which is just a nice kind of, but it's also kind of talks to my nature. I like to adopt different technology. Some people have one editor that they use, and that is it. Doesn't matter what they're working on or where they're working, that is the thing they'll use. These are just tools, and I just, why not try something else? Because it could help improve my workflow, or just for the change. Sometimes it's just nice to look at a different editor, because ultimately the work will be the same. The code I write will be the same. So I try to be of like I don't like to have strong opinions on things like tabs versus
Yeah,
spaces, WebStorm versus VS Code. It's like, that's not important. It's they
it's
will
the
have,
result.
yeah, they will have their merits, and then the pros, and they will have their cons. And it kind of depends. It's just keeping a flexible mindset, and that's kind of what brought me to Pieces, because I do like to, I go product hunt, and I like to see what, new things are being put out there by makers. And I'm often somebody who will, see an app or a tool and give it a go. Nobody's ever heard of it. Like Pieces back in 2022. And it's like now the pounds down. I've said it to you before, like the thing I use every day, every single day. And that is amazing. Sometimes I don't even use my editors every day if I'm off sick or on vacation, but because I store other things in there as well. I mean, it's a lot of code snippets, but it's also like terminal commands. I do a lot of stuff in the terminal, and I'm like the kind of, how do you say, the kind of the default computer guy for my family. So there are certain commands that I've had to look up so many times. Now I have a place I can store them, and I don't have to do that Google search to find that thing. I mean, I know how to do the Google search to find the thing, but just one less step. Um, and that's for me like the thing that really Pieces brought to my well, not just my workflow, my life. Is the not having to be like, oh, where did I see that thing? Which is frustrating, because sometimes you find this perfect piece of code or this perfect command that does something, and it took you hours or even days to find it, because you always found something just close enough, but it didn't really do what you want. And then you try to go about various ways. What was the query I put into Google? It's like, now I know where I can find those things.
Hey, you're selling pieces for us, right? I mean, we like to say that pieces helps you with your everyday job, which is half remembering something and then looking up the rest. Because at the end of the day, you may be doing the same thing often or something similar often. You might have solved that problem before. So we love to hear that it's working.
Oh, it really is. Like, I mean, yeah, the people who aren't yet using Pieces, they're used to that kind of, let's go to Stack Overflow. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I couldn't go back to that way of working, because
Mm.
I don't have to keep looking out that thing, and not being sure if I will get the right response back, because you don't always remember what was the exact term you searched for. Now I just store it in, in my Pieces vault, and it's there, and I can access it from my website ID or VS Code or browser. And to have something that just seems to work so seamlessly, uh, is for me pretty, even in Obsidian, which is my note taking. Like, this is where I write my thoughts and stuff. It feels like it's so now integrated into all the tools I use in my life and my work, that is like, yeah, how are people not using this? Like, really?
I mean, one of the reasons we really wanted to talk with you today is because you've been with us almost from the start, really. So why don't you tell me more about how you found pieces and where it started and how it's kind of grown with you?
I believe I probably was searching for some kind of snippet storage, snippets like management tool, something vague like that. And I think I was directed to Product Hunt. I'm pretty sure it was Product Hunt that I just had I looked on there and I saw Pieces OS, and I was like, for developers. It's like, okay, what's that? And then that took me to the website, and I just like, oh, let's give it a go. And mind you, I tried other, because there are other kind of tools that try to do something similar. But I'll say this: while they probably have their merits as well, a lot of them they're not as frictionless. That's the thing. Pieces is really, it takes away a lot of the friction of storing snippets, because with a lot of the other ones I did try, very manually have to put them in there. And this is like if I'm in my browser, context switching is like, I struggle with that. Also, being neurodivergent, having ADHD, I don't like to change my windows and things. Like when I'm really in the flow, like if I'm doing some research or like, oh, that's really interesting snippet, I don't want to have to then change and then have to like put a snippet in, give it a title, say that might seem like such a small thing, but it just breaks that kind of flow that you're in. Whereas with pieces, I literally just select, and then I think it's like a Command Shift T or P, or right click Save to Pieces, and it's there. I don't even have to think about it until I need to look it up again at a later date. And that for me was like, yeah, um, it was one of those tools that really surprised me. It was a very simple premise, you know, storing snippets, but the way that it's been implemented is, to me, above and beyond anything I could have expected. A lot of people are like make all these grand promises or want to be the next big, and then they don't live up to that. Whereas I felt Pieces was like a very unassuming, because I just stumbled across it and I was like, okay, well, what is this? And there's but it's been there. It's like it's done what I needed to do and more. And also just like recently having met you and Mark and the team, that also kind of reaffirmed that it was a good kind of choice because, like I said, I worked in hospitality, and so having worked with people, I find that, yeah, you can tell a lot about how people interact with each other, or how people treat other people, and the willingness of the Pieces team in the Discord to like to answer almost everybody, or like with Mark when I lost my snippets, jumping on a call with me is like, you don't often get that kind of connection, and it just gave me a good feeling. It feels like, when you have those mom and pop stores where everyone knows everyone, and they know what you like, and that's the feeling. And it's like, we are living up, to that whole for developers. It really feels that every decision you make, um, and every update that comes out, you even give us a heads up and be like, we're sorry, we know before like all the masses come at you. That open line of communication is just, it really, it made me even more excited about like this tool and the future of it and all the things like that are still to come, because it's only been like 2 years and I feel we've already accomplished so much. And so 2 years from now, I wonder, like, yeah, where will Pieces be? And I'm excited for that future because I think it's going to be pretty awesome.
Users like you are really, it's gratifying for us. I joined Pieces only a few months ago, and ever since I've joined Pieces, I've been blown away at how much the team cares. This tool is truly for developers by developers. The team here wants to build an excellent product for developers because they understand the pain, and they also just really love working with developers and using like feedback to inform our roadmap and so forth. So I'm so glad to hear it from people like you, that you get to experience what I'm seeing every day.
It is like you do see that the developers do listen to the suggestions of the user, and try to take that into account. And I think that's ultimately what is going to continue the success of Pieces, because now, people like it's out there now. And I feel like people joining now, I'm like, yeah, I'm like Pieces OG, like day one. And back then it was like a very unassuming too, but like every update that comes out, it's just like, I'm always like stunned at how much better, how much faster, how much more performant it gets. And like, yeah, it just, the integration you've had from the beginning, I don't know how they pulled that off. Like, being able to integrate across so many tools, so many different tools, and it working so well. Um, it is my favorite. It has done my favorite tool. Um, and so I'm always happy to talk about it. I love talking about Pieces because, yeah, no more notepad saving snippets that way for me. Like, I think
Yeah.
if you're still doing it that way, then you need to get on board. You need to like join like the Pieces revolution.
Just get on the train with us, right?
Yeah.
So you are truly, we kind of categorize our users between snippeters and Copilot users. And so I would definitely categorize you into more of like the snippet saver. But do you ever use the Copilot? Has it helped at all?
I have. I've, with the whole AI thing, I think I've been slow to kind of, well, cautious is the word, because I think it's really cool, and I think it can be very helpful. But it is one of those things that when I do use it, and that's both within Pieces or any of the other tools that I have, like in my IDs, they all have now these AI assistants and stuff. Does it really help me with my work? Sometimes in Pieces is great. I have a snippet or a command, and I will ask it to explain what it is, just because I want to know. And I feel like, again, it's the integration, because if you're not doing it that way, you would probably have to go to Chat GPT, like to the site, or you have to just use another tool, and yet everything is like contained in this one. So you have your snippet, and you have, like, this like integrated AI that you can, yeah, get help with a coding problem, or get an explanation to. So I have started to use it more and more, because I started like dabbling a little bit in my other tools. It's like, well, yeah, but I can do this here as well. And that just, to me, is like that's the thought that comes. It's like, well, if I can do it all in Pieces, then I don't need to, again, context switching. It's
Yeah.
like,
So it's more of the like integrated environment that really
yeah,
appeals to you about the Copilot.
it
Yeah.
is. I mean, it's also very, how you say it, unobtrusive.
Yes.
You know,
100%.
like, I feel like trying to adopt AI things, they try and put it, front and center. I want it to be there, but like be there, not like try to like take over my attention
Yeah.
all the time. And so I really like it. Like during the onboarding, you can choose how you want your UI to look, whether you want it to be with the chat AI window, or listed, or your snippets. And then you have the blended search. And, it's like there's just so many possibilities and ways of using Pieces, that, yeah, I quite frequently reset the onboarding just to try a different, like, thought process, to see what the
Yeah.
experience will be like, just because that's how my brain works.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. We had a big push recently for onboarding to try to improve that process. Do you feel like it's gotten a little more
Yeah,
streamlined?
I recently, I think maybe a week ago, I did one of these, and I was really, it really was a big improvement, from a UI standpoint, but also I think it's a lot clearer, like the choices, and just having things like, just, clearly explained. Because I think in the beginning you did have a good onboarding process, but for a lot of people who may not be so familiar with all the options, or are in a hurry, because some people just like to click through things when they install things. It's just like click, 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 done. I feel you can get through it fast enough and still know what it is that you're doing. And even the recommendations are great, like using the local AI model on your machine versus like the cloud option, and even had a recommendation based on the specs of my machine, which one I should use, which I thought was pretty great.
Everything is so new right now. We're all trying to adopt the newest and latest and greatest tools, and they're outpacing us a little bit sometimes. And so we're finding that consumer education is
Yeah,
so important, and kind of teaching people not just how to use our product, but how to leverage the technology that's available with our product.
yeah. And I totally agree with that. I feel like this whole AI thing is really exciting, but I feel there is not enough education about it, because,
Mm,
I mean, with the good, there's the bad, and I think a lot of people, we don't even know what we don't know about how bad it could get. And if you're not really, people talk about like deep fakes and things like that, but everyone should be, like I said, development is the closest thing for me, like, to magic, but it shouldn't be. I feel like people shouldn't feel like their phones and their computers, like, ooh, what's this mysterious thing that does,
yeah.
I believe everyone should have like the smallest understanding, like a basic understanding of how these tools work, so that they can just make informed decisions and informed choices, and hopefully the right choice. I'm very much into my children learning tech, and so, and I try to be very mindful of that, because I can't say no, we're not going to let them use any technology. That's just not a practical approach to it. But it's about using tech in a safe way,
Hmm.
because, if you're going to leverage these tools, you need to be able to make those conscious decisions, and know why you might put this search term in, or this prompt over this one, and what is the possible, future repercussions. Like, if I use this prompt, which is going to go and be stored in a database somewhere as they keep on developing this, you may inadvertently contribute to something later on down the line that doesn't align with your values. So I at least try to keep that in mind. It's like, are my choices ones I will be able to live with
Yeah.
later on if confronted with, the much more difficult things. And it's also like legislation. There's not enough legislation, I think, on tech,
Right.
because all the people who are making the policies and stuff are about our grandparents' ages, and they're not really that tech savvy. So
Yeah. And
you're
things move so
trusting,
slow.
yeah. So you're trusting all the big tech companies to police themselves because that's
Hmm.
a good idea. It's the only industry that is allowed to do that. You couldn't
Yes.
do it like in the medical. Oh yeah, we are going to just make sure that nothing bad happens. No, like that doesn't happen in the other
I
industry.
know.
And yet they've proven time and time again that they clearly can't do that. So
Yes. We think about that a lot. I mean, when it comes to responsibility with AI, you're right. It's going to have to sit with the people building it and the people development. And we think about that a lot. Responsible AI, responsible development within pieces, and how we approach solutions to make sure that they're secure and private. I mean, obviously, on device first is how we tackle most of our problems, but it will become an issue that we will need to think very carefully about as we grow.
and it's comforting for me like that's also a very important like core value at pieces. Like yeah, it just again reaffirms like there's so much about this tool and the people behind it that is just like so in line with my own values. And it's, yeah, you just don't have that in tech that often, because
Hmm.
everybody wants to be the unicorn startup that is like making billions of dollars and stuff, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with success, but we do have to be mindful, even as a front end developer. I recently had this debate in my team about accessibility. A lot of developers, unfortunately, see accessibility as a nice to have. I don't like
Hmm.
that isn't the case. I feel like it's almost a moral obligation as a developer to ensure that everybody can use a website. Now, some
Yeah.
people might think, yeah, that's a bit over the top, but no, it's like that's a whole section of the market and the public that you're basically excluding because you don't want to have to refactor your code, or you don't want to have to do a little bit more work. But when you think about bridges and elevators and things, people build them that they're held to a certain standard, and software is the only place where you don't get held to that. So until you get sued, and then people like
Sure.
when that's the thing. It's like when somebody gets sued about accessibility, then it's a priority. But why does
Punitive consequences are
yeah,
helpful, but
right.
ideally we shouldn't need them, right?
Yeah, like I think it should just be, on us, and people will give you many reasons why it's not our responsibility. I think we write the code, we build the things, so it is our responsibility to even inform our clients who also don't think about it. They're like, oh, you know, um, they think it's a nice to have, and I just don't get that attitude. I feel like a lot of tech is like that. It's like move fast and break things, and take the quick and easy way. Um,
Hmm.
but that's not sustainable, and sometimes it's not ethical, moral to do that.
Thinking about some of the downsides, what are some things you've come across with pieces that you think could use some improvement? Have you found any issues? I mean, obviously we did lose your snippets at one point, but we found them for you.
Yeah, no,
Um,
you did. Like I think the only thing is probably me hitting the snippets max, which
yeah,
like
I think you might have been the first user to do that, actually.
I feel a little bit of pride to know that I literally hit the threshold. But
Hmm.
Mark did help me because, of course, part of it I think was when I lost my snippets and we got them back, they were duplicates. So he showed me this way of
Nice.
tidying it up, and that helped. So I guess in the future, maybe some way to um I don't know, either back my snippets up to
Mhm.
like GitHub as gists, or to have a bit more storage space for snippets, because like I said, I used it every day, and every day for 2 years. I was I was surprised that it was like, oh, computer says no, Frankie, you've reached the max. But that's maybe the only, I wouldn't even call it a downside, because I know that is fully on me. Like um
Well,
yeah.
it shouldn't be. I mean, we should give you opportunities. And in fact, we are actually, as we speak, working on some backup and sync and restore options. And Mark specifically has been kind of leading that charge. So uh, we did hear you on that one.
Well, yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. I feel I mean, I don't have downsides. The things I might like to see in pieces for the future is things like exporting snippets in their format. So if I have a
Hmm.
JS snippet, to be able to like export it as a JS file if I want to
Hmm.
use projects. Importing snippets from other places. Because I know there are not so much me, but I do know there are people who used other tools,
Hmm.
and you have maybe snippets from the past in somewhere else.
Sure.
And
Migration tools.
yeah, migration tools. Um, but I feel like yeah, a lot of the things I want to see, I do see already. It's kind of like you guys are really on it. You have the integrations. I don't know what other tools you can integrate with because you integrate with all the tools I use. I was really happy when I found the Obsidian pieces, like because I do a lot of keep a lot of code notes, and so that was like amazing that it even integrates into my note taking. But yeah, it's I think you guys have done a really good job. Like, and it's not me just saying that. It's like when I think about where Pieces was 2 years ago, where you are now. Yeah, you get people complain when something goes wrong with an update, but it's like some of those people might you haven't seen the growth and the
Hmm.
progression and just how passionate the team is. Like it's like always a happy surprise when I see there's a new update because I'm just like thinking what are Mark and the rest up to. I
Hmm.
can't wait to install an update just to kind of see what did they change. Like the recent one which changed the onboarding was like it was subtle changes, but I thought that's really nice. Like that somebody who's starting today is really going to enjoy that. Uh,
Hmm.
so when you say they're working like on the backup and sync thing, I think that will be the big game changer. Um, and then if after that there's a way to migrate and export, so that you can use your piece of snippets in a project rather than copy pasting, you can just export it as a HTML file. There's a feature request. Sometimes being a front end developer, you have a snippet that you find and you have like HTML, CSS, and JS. But now those would be three different snippets.
Yes.
Or maybe a way to have like a snippet that kind of contains fragments where you can actually
Hmm.
the HTML related to the CSS related to the JS as one snippet. That could be helpful
Yeah.
for
Definitely. Even like some association between different snippets, like these
yeah
guys work together type of thing.
because like that is definitely at least as a front end developer that would be helpful because I do often have code snippets that are related to other code snippets. So some way to relate those together would be nice to see.
Okay, perfect. That's great feedback. Awesome. So you've seen Pieces 2 years ago, you've seen Pieces now. So what's Pieces gonna be up to in 2 years? What do you think? What's your guess?
I'm hoping every developer is using pieces and like it's like the default tool when you onboard in a new company or when you're a hobbyist that the first thing you install on a new computer is pieces because if once you've started using it, it's really like for me it's like how did I ever work before.
Mhm.
It's just so seamless and it's so in the background. It's not like pop-ups and things. And no, it's just like, oh, I want Stack Overflow. Oh, maybe I should keep that for later. Select, save to pieces. Or, I'd be in web store and it'd be like, what was that thing? And not even having to go to pieces, but I can search from within my IDE for the code snippet. I feel like, you hopefully will be the default tool for snippets management. And maybe as the community grows, that there could be a possibility to kind of, how do you say, crowdsource the knowledge, uh,
Mm,
some kind of, some form of cloud-based hive mind where so all these snippets could be shared by all the people and be searchable. I know various other tools have
yeah.
tried this, but I feel that you guys will get it right because that's the thing. When I look at my own personal collection, that's 2 years of painstaking research and searching and if we could help one developer to not have to do that,
Yeah.
or when you're in the 11th hour and you just need that thing that works. So that would be, for me, I think that would be awesome, like to see some form of integrated searchable like database of knowledge that people have accumulated and categorized and cataloged.
I love that. I love that. The public snippet library for everybody to
Yeah,
come check snippets out.
because you have things like source graph and things, but again, they're more like enterprise driven, so it's not the
Yeah.
same. And
Yeah.
just because of how the personal feel of pieces, I feel like if anyone's to get that right for like a community-based version of this, it would be you, because all of us users, if you just to even just take like a general ballpark figure of how many snippets currently probably live in the databases within Pieces, for from backend developers, front end developers, bash scripters, that's all valuable knowledge.
Yeah.
And Stack Overflow filled that for a long time. But again, even on Stack Overflow, sometimes you have to hit a couple of dead ends before you find the thing. So when you do find it, if you can just save it and share it with somebody else so that they don't have to go through the same thing, it's like, yeah, it would make things a lot easier. And then you kind of, yeah, you can keep it up to date, because that people care about their own collections. So that people
Hmm.
date, or they hopefully get rid of things that are redundant or don't work anymore. Whereas posts online can sit there for years, and you think you found a solution to a problem, and it's like from 2013, and it like doesn't work anymore.
Right. Right. For sure. Well, I love the direction you're going, and I think you'll be able to see some things like that coming out soon, or
Oh,
in the future. So
I'm
we're yeah, we love that. All right, Frankie, one last question for you. So, what would you say to someone who just downloaded Pieces?
welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. No, I mean that. Like I mentioned earlier, having like ADHD, one of the things that I had to learn was how to make my work life easier. Pieces has
Mhm.
been one of the tools that makes my work life easier, because I search for a lot of things in my day, and I don't like having to change my browser windows and thing. I try to keep it to a minimum. So this one tool allows me to do that. And it's just, yeah, I now have a personal database of knowledge that I search for, and I know is there. And that's
Mhm.
just like, yeah, anyone who installs that today, they don't even know how it's the best decision that they've made. Like once you kind of get past like the onboarding and learning, you just at first you think it's just another snippets app, until you start actually really using it. Because when you just copying and pasting it into Pieces, it's one thing, but the minute you then start saving snippets from the browser and
Mhm.
then using them from the IDE, and when you see that integration work so seamlessly, it's like a big game changer. And it's just like, wow, it's like mind blowing.
Awesome. Well, Frankie, we are so grateful for you, and we thank you so much for your time today.
Happy to.
It's so great to hear from users like you. So thank you.
It's always great to talk to you and to talk about Pieces. And yeah, I'm a big fan, always going to be a big supporter of the software, because you guys genuinely are doing things for developers, and there's a lot of effort and care. And you listen to the requests and the the pain points of users, and you try your best to take some of that on board in your implementation, and that is very valuable. At least I, for one, to speak for myself, say how grateful I am for that.